When it comes to fight analysis, I've been asked to do much lengthier analysis videos on certain matchups. The mini theories were always intended to be as such as they were, mini theories. However, I did want to do a one-off video to see if you guys would like some of these longer videos. I'm joined by a very special guest today, my fellow analyst and friend Tylearn. Today we'll be doing Cobra Kai Fight Analysis, in-depth discussion on requested matchups from you, the viewer. So the first fight we have is Da-eun and Johnny versus Chozen, all three of them in their Season 3 incarnations. As we already know, it is implied in Season 3, Chozen at this point has surpassed Da-eun as being not only the better fighter, but also the better sensei, the Miyagi-Do pressure points that would go on and save his life later on. Although Chozen does have experience with multiple opponents, Da-eun and Johnny are kind of a little bit of a different story. Da-eun, of course, did beat Chozen with the drum technique, and at this point, Johnny is equal in terms of strength. In original analysis, I predicted that Da-eun and Johnny could easily, beat him with the numbers game, because Chozen might do the Miyagi-Do pressure points on somebody, try to do it on Johnny, but Da-eun would know how to counter that and would try to kick Chozen out of the way. So my prediction is that Da-eun and Johnny would win this fight. What do you think?
Personally, Stryfe, I believe that Chozen would get overwhelmed, given the fact that even Da-eun was able to surprise Chozen and get the jump on him in the end of their training. And yes, they are training, but the thing is, this is the best we see Chozen, really. And Chozen has other techniques, but we really don't know what they're capable of. And so basically, I'm going to say Da-eun and Johnny are able to take on Chozen, given the fact that Da-eun is able to actually off-guard him and surprise him. And Johnny would be stronger than Da-eun via, outscaling him in their fights with Kreese, since Da-eun fought a damaged Kreese and lost, whereas Johnny just dominated a healthy Kreese. And so I think the two of them might be able to actually beat Chozen. However, if you want to say that Chozen just pressure points and kills on sight, then that's definitely possible as well. Now, Dutch versus Mike Barnes is a pretty crazy match narratively. I mean, throw in Hawk and it would just be an insane fight of rage and just aggressiveness. However, though, I think Mike Barnes is a lot more skilled than Dutch, given the fact that we know that Johnny is stronger than Dutch. Johnny lost to Da-eun. Da-eun gets more stronger and, trains at Karate Kid 3 and basically beats Mike Barnes via off-guarding him and confusing him with kata, and can't beat him in a normal fight in terms of, power. Before he was losing to Fear, he tried fighting Mike Barnes and just got completely humiliated. What do you think, Stryfe?
The interesting thing about this matchup too is that if you remember the original Karate Kid film, Dutch scores 1 point on Da-eun. Da-eun scores 1 point on Dutch, and typically I think in that preliminary round it was the first to 2 to first to 3, because the way it was edited, we never really got to see Dutch's true potential. So that's another thing as well. We know Dutch is the predecessor to Hawk, just how aggressive he was and how he pretty much was about to start a fight by himself in the locker room with Da-eun. However, I do agree with your opinion though that Mike Barnes would win this, just given what we know about Mike Barnes. He's a national karate fighter, has won several tournaments, arguably say he's one of the best in the nation. I would have to agree with you that Mike Barnes would have to beat Dutch in this round. What we have next is Kreese 69 versus Robby Season 3. This is another one I already covered. It's just a very interesting matchup that was requested and brought to my attention. As we know, we don't know how old Kreese is at this point. We can probably assume early to mid-20s. Meanwhile, Robby's probably at least 16, 17 in the Season 3 timeline. We do have to give Robby the fact that he is very skilled and just mastered so many techniques in Miyagi-Do in a very short amount of time, especially the two-legged kick that even Da-eun could not do and only Mr. Miyagi could do. And then, of course, now being able to adapt to Cobra Kai style. However, Kreese is, just overall better condition than Robby is because he's in the military. Not to mention he just had that fight with Captain Turner. So I think at this point, Kreese literally would not show Robby any mercy and would just go in for the kill. He would just take it as a life or death situation, especially with what's happened to him in Vietnam. What do you think?
Now, I'm not gonna lie, I think Kreese is definitely more durable, given the fact that he's able to fight the captain and they're stabbing each other with wooden sharp objects and stuff like that. And I think Kreese's pain tolerance naturally would be better than Robby's, since Robby almost died to a locker by a suppressed Johnny, so you can't even say that's a feat for him because Johnny's not even going all out. So you can't even scale him to really anything. It's really vague. And so I think Kreese is definitely going to overpower Robby. However, Robby would last long due to him just being way more skilled than Kreese. But Kreese is just going to overpower him and defeat him, in my opinion.
So now we have Miguel Season 2 versus Johnny Lawrence 1984. This is a kind of a tough match to call. We know Miguel in Season 2 is at his prime. He's learned how to better defend. He's better balanced, emotionally, physically, and his skill set and everything else. However, he's now taken on his sensei, who was the same age in 1984. At that point, Johnny Lawrence has been training for 5 years, is a 2-time All-Valley champion, has contended 3rd generation black belt Daryl Vidal on several occasions in different tournaments. So this is a really tough match to call. Mainly because Miguel is the perfect hybrid of what Johnny and Daniel could have been if they did like a fusion technique, so to speak. The only thing here though is that Miguel has only been training for a year, and again Johnny's been training for 5 years, so I would have to give this to Johnny. Even though Miguel is a little bit more advanced than Johnny was, I think Johnny he was still very ruthless to be able to easily press Miguel, and although he did care about honor and kind of pay the price for it at some point, I think given the fact that just how angry he was, like he treated Daniel in their final match in the 1984 All Valley, I think Johnny would take Miguel. What do you think?
Miguel definitely is a skilled fighter. However, personally, I think Johnny is just a lot more powerful given the fact that he scales to Daniel. Daniel wouldn't be getting much stronger throughout Karate Kid 1 and 2. And then he's able to take on Chozen, who's able to destroy stone statues, calc that wall level. And basically, these feats are just more impressive in terms of AP objectively, in terms of what the new Cobra Kai kids can really produce. And so I think Johnny is just a lot more powerful. However, Miguel is probably more skilled than Johnny. So Miguel will last pretty long, but Johnny's just going to overwhelm him with his power. And hell, Johnny might even be more skilled given the fact that he's able to take on black belts. Specifically 3rd degree black belts stated by Kreese when he was talking to Robby.
So we have 85 Daniel versus Season 2 Miguel. This is a video I've covered before, but I also want to clarify because it was kind of confusing to guys that might have already seen the mini theory. So when I say 85 Daniel, I mean this is after Karate Kid 3. So he's mastered everything at this point. The drum technique from Karate Kid 2. He's beaten Mike Barnes and knows how to focus. He no longer gives in to fear. Versus, of course, Season 2 Miguel, who we know is at his prime. He pretty much beat Robby, but only quote-unquote lost because Robby kicked him off the railing. So this one I was kind of a split decision on because if it was in a point-to-point system, I think Daniel would not be intimidated by Miguel in any means and would be able to easily beat him in a tournament. However, I would have to say though, because Miguel, as far as a street fight, Miguel could possibly beat Daniel if he was able to get the one-up on him, especially with, that crazy fight that he had with Robby in the school. For me, I'm kind of torn on this one, so it's really hard to say. Tylearn, what do you think?
Now, personally, I think Daniel probably might have better defense given the fact that he has mastery over the drum technique. I also do think as well that Daniel has just a lot more versatility in his hands. Like, if he uses kata, I don't really know what Miguel would do. He'd just probably get confused, allowing Daniel to kind of off guard him and slam him, like how he does to stronger opponents such as Mike Barnes, who's stronger than Johnny, who should be stronger than Miguel, as we talked about earlier in the video. And also, I do believe that Daniel should have higher AP, given the fact that, he's able to take kicks from Chozen, which were able to break, pieces of stone. So I think AP and durability-wise, Daniel's just going to be beating Miguel up. And not to mention, he might not even need to use AP and just use kata to basically off-guard him and get the jump on him. And also, by the way, for anyone who thinks that, oh, well, Miguel can take the most powerful kick in Miyagi-Do, which would be physically stronger than Daniel, that wouldn't be physically stronger than Daniel, given the fact that, it's karate, so it is a more objectively powerful technique, but that doesn't mean that Daniel is just weaker than Robby because he has a stronger technique. Daniel's physically stronger, but Robby does have, more skill. So really, it wouldn't change the answer, in my opinion, for Daniel versus Miguel. However, it would be an interesting fight to see. Now, personally, I think Season 1 Hawk is going to be losing this fight. I do believe narratively it kind of fits because, Hawk does embrace the old Cobra Kai, especially in Season 2. And Season 1, is foreshadowing this Hawk, after breaking Robby's arm. And Daniel also got an injured limb as well. But anyways, I do believe Daniel should be stronger, and the crane kick would be something that Hawk would just be confused by, similar to how Johnny was. And Johnny's definitely a more skilled fighter than Hawk will ever be. And so, in my opinion, Daniel is just going to kind of, slam Hawk. Stryfe, what do you think?
So there is a counterpoint to this that I would say. Hawk has already know what the crane kick's going to look like. Although he's not really seen off screen, you can kind of hear him in the background when Miguel does the crane kick on his first opponent. You can hear kind of Hawk yell in the background, cheering on and whatnot. So I think Hawk would not be fooled by this for Daniel. However, Hawk isn't in his prime just yet, as we see him in Season 2 and Season 3. So compared to my Season 3 Hawk versus 84 Daniel video, I think I would agree with you on this one. Hawk would lose this one. Because at this point, he would just be similar to a Dutch, and especially if they're fighting on a point-to-point basis. Daniel almost did a completely clean sweep, except with the exception of Bobby going through and beating everybody in Cobra Kai. So, yeah, I think Daniel would definitely win this one, though he would have to try to come up with something else other than the crane kick to beat Hawk.
That is true. However, I would probably say, though, given the fact that the crane kick is something that Daniel did perform and kind of like slammed Johnny with, even though he had like an injured leg, I think it might just be kind of enough for Hawk, especially since Hawk would probably be like, oh, I've seen this, so therefore he'd probably get arrogant, which is something that he had to like overcome in season 3. So we know that he is kind of cocky, so he might even just like know what it is, but just might just go in head charge anyway.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, Hawk is definitely aggressive, especially see that aggressive transformation from the end of season 1 to end of season 2. So more than likely, I think that would be a one way it would go down too.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely contentious and definitely an interesting matchup narratively to talk about.
Thanks again to Tylearn for joining me. Please check out his channel and show him some love. Let me know what you guys think. What matchup would you like for me to talk about next? If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, liking the video, sharing it with your friends, and commenting, as these all help my channel grow. Make sure to check out my Twitch channel. My new schedule is Wednesdays and Sundays, 5 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, and Fridays, 8 to 11 p.m. Central Standard Time. Stay tuned because I'll be doing live stream discussions there too, as far as theories, ask me anythings, etc. No subscription required. Also, if you want to directly support the channel, consider becoming a member for 99 cents and enjoy perks such as the VIP Discord, members-only live streams, and more. Thanks for watching, stay beautiful, stay awesome, and we'll catch you around next time.